Hello, my name is Robert Higginbotham, and in this video I'll be following and expanding on Assess Tutorials 7 and 8. The objectives of these tutorials is to optimise the Barstool produced in the previous video, to reduce the try count to 750 or below. I'll then move on to cutting my own seams into the model before producing a UV unwrap. Once again, for this video I'll be following along with the guided tutorial to optimise and unwrap the model. Having a try count of 750 is somewhat restrictive, so there isn't a great deal I can do to diverge from the guided tutorial without ceasing to follow it entirely. As such, I'll be using the version of the Barstool with my minor modifications just to maintain some of my own flair. So we're going to start out by taking a copy of the model, so we're going to clone as a copy, and we're going to call this SM_Barstool001 just for now, because the original we're going to rename High Poly. So we've got the High Poly Barstool. We'll just hide the reference for now because we don't need that right this minute. And then we have SM_Barstool. Now, I already have the UI up here showing the polys and the verts, but you can hit 7 on your keyboard to bring that up, and we can go down to Configure Viewports and go to Statistics. We can actually turn on the triangle count, and we can have total plus selection, just so that we can see what we have on the specific model that we have selected. So if I was to hide the high poly, we only have the low poly version as it will be currently selected, and that's what we can see up here in the top left. So what we're going to do now is look to remove some of these edges to maintain the silhouette but reduce the overall topology. So we're going to start off on these little ridges along the sides here. Just going to select some of these out, ones that should be the least destructive to the shape, and then we're going to hold Control and Backspace to get rid of them. I'm going to start working around the model and just determining which of these are unnecessary. Okay, we'll work our way onto these legs. Yeah, see, that's not so bad there, so I'm just going to Control Z to get that back, and I want to do it on all of the legs. And doing it on everything at the same time will mean that I can just see it down here when I actually delete them out, just so we can keep an eye on whether it is actually changing the silhouette of the model. Yep, south, so north facing again. I'm just going to watch here as I Control Backspace. Yeah, that's not really changed anything. It looks a little bit more drastic here, but if I was to hit F4 just to turn the edge faces off, suddenly it's not so bad with the edges really pointing out where the different geometry goes. So moving on, we're down to 1280 tries. Now I don't know whether to take this or take this. We want one of them to maintain the shape. Or maybe we don't. I could probably, if we zoom out on this so we can be looking and actually see what changes here. And I'm going to take these on each of the legs. And I'm going to take them as well. Just remove them. Again, looking down on this viewport here and the one below, just to see if we get any major changes. No, I'm quite happy with that. It just straightens everything out. And then for these, I don't think these are wholly necessary. So we'll control and backspace. And again, it's not changed the silhouette intensely. We can always turn the high poly model back on to see that over the top. And if I hit F4 so that we're coming outer edge faces, and I just turn that off and on, just to cycle and see that we're maintaining that overall shape, which we are. So F4 again to turn on edged faces. And I think the next thing I want to do, yeah, I think what I'm going to do is come over to this edge here, and I believe it's in loops, and set flow. So what set flow is going to do is move that edge between the two edges that are adjacent to it. So I'm going to do the same with this one. And then if I cycle with the high poly, we can see we've moved a little, but we're still maintaining that overall shape. If I just Control Z those out, and we try again, I feel like we are actually closer to the shape like that. I think I'm going to keep it like that for now, and we'll come back to that in a little while. So next we'll work on footrest. I realise that I've just sort of found my flow and continued doing this. I have watched the tutorial before doing this, and I will pull the tutorial up and continue watching it once I've finished optimising the obvious areas of this model, just in case there's anything that I'm missing out. But I'm pretty confident in removing the edges that are unnecessary just to maintain the silhouette of the model. And that's all of them. So we're going to again hold Control and press backspace, and it looks more drastic than it actually is. If we were to hit F4, we can see that we're still maintaining a lot of that shape, and we can cycle the high poly over the top of it. The silhouette is very similar. We're only losing a slight amount of detail, and that's brought us down to 920 tries. So we want to look at where else we can get away with losing a little bit of detail. I'd really like to keep this extra loop on the top. I think what I might even do is select this loop, and we'll see what set flow does for us. I think if I just use the move tool and lower that ever so slightly, and then we'll see how that looks against the high poly. I think we're pretty close. I think that does a lot more for us. So next, I think what we're going to do is undo the chamfer on the underside of the legs. To do that, what I'm going to start by doing is taking this edge on each of the legs, and with that selected I'm going to control backspace. Now the way that the tutorial guides for me to handle this is to delete the polys from the bottom, and then to cap fill the legs, which is definitely an option and it's not a bad option. But what I'm going to do instead is take all of these edges hold control and we'll select vertex, and then I'm going to set the Z position down to 0 to flatten that out. So I'm going to jump into target weld. I'm just going to weld these back. And that's brought us down to 824 tries. So let's have a quick look where we could lose a little bit more detail from this. Now what the tutorial guides is for this section here where we've got like the little ridges. If I just bring the reference back in, where we've got these little ridges around the side of the stool, rather than wasting a lot of topology and detail on that, we will select these parts in the centre. If I just switch back over to edges, and we'll control backspace those out, and we'll handle that with a texture instead. I'll just get rid of this. And that has brought us down to 752 tries. We are so close to having this. If we can just drop a little bit of detail from somewhere else. Okay, so returning to the legs, I think that maybe it's a good idea to actually do the set flow on these upper parts at least. So loops and set flow, just to round this curve off a touch more, and we'll do the same on the bottom. And again we're just going to set flow, loops, set flow. Now if I zoom out a touch on here and bring ourselves in, I'll do the same again, bring ourselves in. What can we get away with removing now? I feel like maybe this one in the centre here, if I was to control backspace that, we still have the bump, but it's a sharper bump, whereas again control Z, I like how that flows. So what about this from the side here? Oh, if I get the the correct edge. So this, control and backspace, it's starting to look a bit blocky on the side, whereas that maintains the feeling of the chair. What about maybe one of these towards the top? I'm just going to look at this one. No, that's too much. This one. That's too much. We need that curve. That needs to stay in for certain. I think that's the best that we're getting with that slight raise in the centre. What I might even do, because that's a bit too much of a point, if I take one of these vertices, and we take the Z coordinate and we'll copy that, and we'll take the one in the centre, just Control Z, make sure I'm using Q here, and back to move, and then I'm going to paste that in there, and that's flattened the seat out, and we're actually quite close to what they have in the tutorial at this point. We've sort of reverted back to it, but our high poly is slightly different with the raise in the seat, and we will of course be using the high poly for texturing, and that's got us down to 728 tries. So at this point what I'm going to do is make sure that we've only got the editable poly, like the entire object selected rather than the sub-selections. I'm going to go up to File and I'm going to save it. Once I've found a location that I'm going to save this, I'm going to call this SM_Barstool, and I'm going to save. And now we want to look at creating the UV unwrap, so we'll go to the modifiers list. We'll search for unwrap UVW, and then we're going to clear any seams that this is auto-generated. So we're going to move up a channel, abandon, down a channel, move. So now what we want to do is start looking at putting the seams into this model. So we're going to switch over to Edge, and we're going to use point-to-point seams. So we're going to select the top, and we're just going to work this seam around the outer edge of the model at the top. To give us the island for the top here, and we'll right click to deselect. I'm going to do the same along the bottom of the seat cushion. Right click to deselect, and I'm going to do the same at the bottom of the base of the seat. Have to be careful not to do too much, because it tries to do this where it's cutting through the middle of the model. Like that, nice. Now I'm going to move to the back of the model, and I'm going to create another seam cutting through these pieces here, just so that they can actually be unwrapped in the texture space. Okay, so next the legs. Going to just work around the ends of the legs here. Okay, now we want to do the bottoms. And then we're going to cut a seam down the inside of the legs, again so that these will unwrap in the texture space. So they'll unwrap. We've got the top of the seat, the side of the seat, the side of the base of the seat, the bottom of the seat, tops and bottoms of the legs, and incisions down the the inside of each one so that they are split, and it's now just the footrest left to do. So we're going to again create another cut along the inside of the model, like this, and then I like to go from the back for anything like this, so we're just going to take this point at the back of the model and cut around. So that'll unwrap too. So now that we have the seams in place, we're going to start unwrapping the model. And the way that we're going to do this is by selecting one of the faces on each of the parts, and we're going to expand the selection to get the entire island, and we're then going to use pelt. We're going to start pelt, and we're going to commit, and then we're going to take this and just move it out of the way, come up to tools, relax, and apply. And then we're going to start going through and do the same thing for each part of the model. Like with this one, where we've got the broken topology at the end there, I'm just going to switch over to rotate to make selection easier. I'll worry about straightening this out properly in a moment. I'm going to select the broken end, and I'm going to break that from the model. I'm then going to go into tools and hit relax, and that relaxes the model back out, the topology there. We're then going to switch over to edges. I'm going to take this whole edge, without rotating it preferably. Right, hold on, before I do that, we want to go back into polys. We just want to move this and rotate it more or less in the right orientation, and then we're going to take those edges and we're just going to stitch these to average. And then we'll take the entire selection again and we're going to relax. There we go, much better. Right, and that just leaves these parts here, which are just the ends of the stool, the legs. So the way that we're going to handle these is going to go up to mapping, normal mapping, and we're going to switch to box mapping. Hit OK. And they all seem alright. We're going to go to tools and we're going to hit relax. So now that we have everything relaxed and mapped out nicely, I'm going to select it all. And then I'm going to change the padding to 0.004. And then I'm going to pack custom. And it's not going to do a very good job, but it has rescaled everything to be the correct texel density. From this point, I'm going to be rotating and potentially breaking some of these parts up just to fit everything within the texture space, so I'll time-lapse from here while I just go ahead and do that. So just to talk about what I was doing there, I was taking each one of these islands and I was using the Reshape Elements tab and Straighten Selection just to straighten these out to make the best use of the texture space that we have. What I think I'm going to do as well is the underside of the model, so this island here, I'm probably going to reduce the scale within the texture space because it's very rare that the player is going to see the underside of the seat, and I feel like that resolution would be better used on the rest of the model as a whole, all of the faces that we're actually going to be seeing on the model. Okay, I shall resume the time lapse and continue packing all of this into the texture space. So I think at this point this is as tightly packed as I'm going to get this. So what I'm going to do is close down the UV editor. I'm going to right click on the Unwrap UVW and I'm going to collapse to and hit yes, and that has ingrained those UVs into the model now. And what I'm going to do is go up to File and hit a save on this, and then we're going to take the SM_Barstool, which is the low poly version of this model. I'm going to go File and Export, then I'm going to go Export Selected. And once we've got a location that we want to save this, we're going to put a name in. I've got SM_Barstool, which is perfect. That's what I want it to be called. I'm going to hit save. And that's the low poly. Oh, sorry, we want to hit OK here. Make sure that we've got smoothing groups ticked. So that's the low poly version of the model exported out. And we want to do the same for the high poly as well. So I'm going to go File, Export, Export Selected, and it's in the same place. And I'm going to call this High Poly _Barstool. I'm going to hit save. I'm going to hit OK. And that's also the high poly version of the Barstool exported. And that concludes Assess Tutorials 7 and 8. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.